Welcome, Donna. My name is Lisa Moscatiello, and I am on the planning committee for our spring conference at Mid-Atlantic Group Psychotherapy Society, and we're really excited to have you. One thing that really kind of caught my attention and grabbed my imagination was the title, and then Rose. That was so evocative. And I just want to hear from you what that is about for you. What made you want to choose that title?
Because I think it's a moment that we all experience as therapists, especially when conversations get challenging. So whether you're working with an individual or you're working in group, or for me, teaching also, inevitably someone will say something. And especially if it's taken in an offensive way, if it's a microaggression or something of that nature, quite often you freeze. I certainly have, where it's like I'm just caught and it's,
Yeah.
what do I do now? So I wanted to kind of capture that moment because I think it's such a common experience and it really speaks to the work that I do.
Uh-huh. So your heart drops, your frontal lobe checks out.
You start sweating.
Yeah, everything kind of goes, goes blank.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of imagining, as I anticipate the conference that we're about to do, that some of those moments might happen among the participants.
I
And
actually hope they do.
okay, say more.
Um, I've learned, and what I try to get people to understand is that the work that we do causes discomfort sometimes, especially if we get into challenging conversations around identity, marginalized identities, and the intersection of our various identities. That can get challenging and uncomfortable. Um, and personally, I have a very strong reaction because these days everyone's talking about safe space and whether or not something's safe.
Right.
And I don't know what that looks like, a safe space.
Mhm.
So I always tell people that I'll try to create a space that when we are uncomfortable, we can talk about it.
Mhm.
A brave space, a
Uh-huh.
space where we can do the work that we need to do.
Mhm.
So I'm okay with people being uncomfortable. In
Okay.
fact, I hope they are because it means I'm doing the work that I should be doing.
Uh-huh. So if it's like, if not no pain, no gain, but if you're not a little bit, or maybe you think maybe no pain, no gain.
Yeah, something like that, sure. um, I think that we're often uncomfortable. It's just that these days, especially with the state of racial tensions and injustice in the United States in particular, people just don't know what to do with themselves anymore. They don't know what to say. They don't want to offend, but they want to do. They're very well intentioned, and so people freeze a lot, right? And then I froze, and this includes people of color. I don't want to suggest at all that people of color don't have work to do too. We certainly do. It's different work, but we freeze too in these circumstances.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just, I'm preaching to white people and saying that they freeze and they don't know how to do this work and it's all about white fragility. Not at all. It's work that we all need to do and conversations that we all need a skill set in order to have them.
Okay. So maybe part of what you're addressing is, you know, we're not going to have a totally safe space. We can't guarantee or even want people to not feel some pressure,
Mhm.
but we're also not going into this hopefully totally unequipped.
No, that's where I come in.
Okay.
So hopefully I will be during the course of the conference be dropping in skills for people to use as they're in their process groups, right? And as they encounter these moments of discomfort.
Mhm.
Um, I will probably be giving people prompts for their process groups to get things going a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm expecting people to practice the skills
Mhm. And
that they're learning.
um, so what do you think is, I'm just kind of um, digesting some of the things you're saying. Um, what do you think is the potential or the um, possible contribution of the work that we do in groups for um, rippling out into our world, you know?
Hmm, it's a big question. Um, I hope, especially for the work that we do in groups, that the more we're able to effectively facilitate conversations around change and difference, that we're able to carry that into the rest of our lives as well.
Mhm.
So the skill set that I use is called mindful facilitation, and I can ask my family. I do this all the time. I do it, Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, yeah. What better time to utilize a skill set than when people are together who aren't necessarily normally together,
Mhm.
and where there may be challenges around different political issues and so forth. So um, putting together a set of skills that enables you to lean into discomfort a little bit, to lean into conflict, and to see it more as an opportunity
Mhm.
as opposed to something to be avoided.
Uh-huh.
Right. So my husband's family, for instance, is very much a don't ask, don't tell. We don't talk about politics or any, just keep have a safe zone
Yeah.
at the dinner table. And that just doesn't work for me. Um,
Yeah.
so introducing them a little bit to like, well, we can talk about these things. No one's going to die.
Uh-huh.
And maybe we'll actually learn something valuable about each other.
Uh-huh. Um, so when you talk about doing that kind of engagement mindfully, and so I think mindfulness is becoming one of those terms that, you know, I don't know, it almost it's like a buzzword. We all
Mhm,
kind of think, oh yeah, yeah, mindfulness, whatever.
mhm, mhm.
What does that mean for you? Like, to if we could try to have a fresh perspective on that.
Sure, sure. For me, it's very different. So I know that it generally conjures up kind of yoga, granola, crunchy feelings,
Yeah.
but for me, mindfulness is very specific. I'm actually trained in doing mindful facilitation. I was trained in this skill set through stir fry seminars in California through Le Manoir, who has been doing this for years. And what it really is it's a skill set designed to engage people in deeper levels of conversation, which hopefully as therapists, that's what we want to do, right? And it involves a series of things, some very familiar to us, such as responsive listening. It's just that we do it in a particular way, and then we have a series of inquiries that we do in a particular way to achieve a certain, particular goals. So
Okay.
I'll be sharing some of this information with people during the conference and asking them to even practice it in dyads a little bit before we go into our process groups, so that we can begin to kind of get used to this way of speaking to each other.
So we're going to start in two and then branch out.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
we as therapists, we should be going into this a little bit familiar with some of the basic, like yeah, reflective listening, responsive.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not asking anybody to drop what they do or to completely turn around their skill. I want them to embrace the skills that they already have and then to add this. These should be complementary skills.
Right? Um, well, I think it would be nice for our members in our audience to know sort of how you arrived at this moment, like what led you to be doing this particular work at this particular time.
Mhm. Um, that's a great question because it really has been life transforming for me. It transformed my whole focus and my career, business, and all of that.
Okay.
Um, I grew up partially in the United States and partially in Europe. I spent about 10 years in Brussels, Belgium. So when I came back here to go to college, I came back with a slightly different perspective than most African American just here in the United States. And I definitely had an intercultural experience. So, I'm multilingual, I'm bilingual, bicultural, and so forth. And that has served me very well, and has gotten me or kept me interested in how do we make the most out of our time with each other? How do we advance things? How do we communicate with each other when we have differing political views and so forth? And that's always been something I was interested in. So that, coupled with the fact that I have for years taught whatever the required diversity course is with whatever name. Right now, the one that I teach is Power, Privilege, and Oppression, but I've taught it in different um, iterations at different schools because schools of social work tend to have some type of required course.
Mhm.
And it's always been a good experience for me, but I've also seen it fail a lot with a lot of other people. I frankly think the only reason I've been able to successfully teach those courses is because of my group skills,
Uh-huh.
because I basically run class like a group. If I didn't have that, I would not have had any idea how to start teaching that course. So I've seen it explode with lots of people. I've seen lots of faculty avoid teaching the content. I've seen lots of therapists avoid talking to people about differences of identity and so forth, and just not knowing how to have that conversation. Knowing that we need to ethically have the conversation isn't enough.
Mhm.
People, and in school, they don't teach you a skill set about how to do that. So we have these awkward conversations, like, you and I are different. What do you think about that? And usually the client looks at you and goes, yeah, and and they say, I'm fine. And then the conversation moves on and we never talk about it
Right.
again. So I want to have those conversations. And so one of the things through teaching that course, I was exposed to the films by Le Manoir of Stir Fry Seminars. And one of his most famous films is The Color of Fear. And the films really affected me profoundly. And years later, after teaching this and showing these films over and over and over again, I was on the mailing list and had an opportunity for a certification in mindful facilitation, which I ignored when it first came.
Okay.
I was like, I don't want to pay so much money.
Uh-huh.
And then by the next year, and it came around again, I'm like, I don't know if I can continue doing the work that I would want to do without having an additional skill set. I really feel like I need to be more grounded in this and have a way to engage people in conversation, keep the conversation going, help them speak to each other, which is what we want to do in groups. So I got certified, and that was a two-year long process of meeting every other week before we met virtually, right? So this was Google Hangouts or something like that, with a small cohort of a small mixed race cohort of 12 people, and us engaging in this skill set and doing these conversations every other week. And it got really deep. And then we had to go out to California 4 times
Okay.
for intensives during a 2 week period. And then I had an internship on top of it. So I really plunged into that work. And by the time I finished doing that over the course of 2.5 years, it made me want to really focus on that in my career. So I since then really changed direction and created 2 businesses. So I have intercultural counseling, which is my private practice, and that focuses on individual, but now more so on group counseling.
Mhm.
And I have Intercultural Network, which is the business that I have that goes into organizations such as MAGPS, and I do workshops and trainings, customized trainings for different organizations.
So
So,
it sounds to me like somewhere uh, along the line and within those trainings and those experiences, I imagine that you may have had some of those explosions and you were able to get past them or go through them.
mhm. Yeah, no, part of learning the skill was really becoming very vulnerable and talking about things that I certainly had never talked to people about. A lot of issues around race, other identities, internalized racism and oppression, which I knew was there in an intellectual way, but hadn't really gone deep and talked to anybody about that. And mind you, this is after years of psychoanalysis, years of supervision, years and years of training.
Talking about within yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No one ever touched any of that.
Uh-huh.
So over the course of these 2 years, yeah, had many very in-depth emotional conversations learning this skill set.
Mhm.
Um, but it was very good for me. It was wonderful.
Uh-huh. I can imagine that some of that could be painful.
Of course. Of course.
But whatever it is that awakened in you or shifted in you, it
Mhm.
seems like it was really profound.
It absolutely was. It changed pretty much how I see myself and how I see myself in the world. And then again, the work that I want to spend the rest of my time doing.
Mhm.
So, and I get really excited when I talk about it.
Yeah, no. um, do you think that where do you think our field as therapists is right now and needs to go when it comes to having these conversations around difference, culture, race?
Well, we have a lot of challenges now. We have challenges because I think a lot of people, I am not going to say the word WOKE because I'm trying to, it drives me nuts,
Yeah.
but I think a lot of people have learned and have become more aware of the sea of white supremacy that we all swim in,
Mhm.
right? And the impact that that has on a lot of people, on all of us, actually.
Yes.
Right? It has an impact. So to say that racism only impacts me as a Black person would be like, no, it impacts you too. It's not just me. And so to really realize and have people working on what the impact is of white supremacy and racism that we all live with all the time, or we're entrenched in it. I think that has been something that people have become aware of,
Okay.
but they don't know what to do with it.
So now what?
Yeah, so it's like, okay, I've done this, I've unpacked my invisible knapsack, I've,
Yeah,
I've
right.
done the work, I've gone to anti-racism trainings, and now what?
Yeah.
So the now what is we need to do the work, but people aren't quite sure what the work is
Yeah.
and how to go about that. um so that's what I'm interested in now, and because I think that's where we're at, where when I run groups, I run an intercultural process group for therapists now. And, one of the things that we were talking about the other day is, some really well-intentioned, experienced therapists who happen to be white, and they're also therapists who are not white in the group, really sitting with, well, I want to do this, but I don't want to take up too much space. And I want, and really, but with a lot of angst, kind of not knowing,
Um,
again, not knowing where to go next.
uh-huh. You mean like I'm afraid I'm gonna make a mistake or I'm gonna.
Right, exactly. Which, of course, is a characteristic of white supremacy,
Yeah.
being at that perfectionism.
Right.
So just, acknowledging that, talking about it, and not getting stuck in that, because people get very stuck. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I know I'm this, and I don't want to, I don't want to cause harm, and which I love. I mean, I love that we've gotten this far.
Hmm.
I absolutely do, and that's profoundly meaningful to me as an African American woman. But we need to go farther.
Uh-huh.
We have more work to do with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard right now because I mean, I think even in some of the conversations I've seen on listservs and so forth, but in the greater political world of whiteness, there's already starting to be some like, okay, enough.
Mhm.
You know, why do we have to keep doing this?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
um, so is there anything that you feel would be helpful for folks who are going to be watching this, or if I end up transcribing it or reading it, that you think they should know, or it would maybe make the difference between someone thinking, okay, this would be nice to do, and I really need to do this. I want to be there.
Well, one of the things that I don't like with trainings
Mhm.
and things, I used to sit around. This is going to sound really arrogant, and I don't mean it that way, but I used to go to trainings and I would sit there and watch. So, okay. Or I would listen and say, that sounds really interesting and it's important, and what do I do with this now?
Yeah.
How do I do that? Can I even do that? Are you giving me any skills that I can actually apply to something?
Hmm.
So what I can say is that I do not do trainings like that.
Okay.
I cannot guarantee that this will be the most important thing in your life. I can't guarantee that, but I can say that I'm going to provide you with a skill set that you can use tomorrow, like the next day,
Uh-huh.
immediately.
Okay.
And that hopefully will keep you hungry for more, because as we all know, if we don't practice skills, obviously they go, we forget them. But it is a very interactive training, because I also don't like trainings that aren't interactive.
Mhm.
Everyone will speak to someone.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I guarantee everyone will speak
Can't
to
just sit
someone.
back and do it.
Yeah, you can't just sit back, but that's what breakout rooms are for,
Mhm.
right? So this is why I start with smaller groups of dyads, and then we get bigger and bigger. Because if I just throw everybody into process groups, some people will benefit from that and be practicing and talking and so forth. And
Yeah.
some people will sit back because they're, for so many reasons. I'm an introvert, so I certainly understand the sitting back in groups and letting other people kind of do things before I interject. This is not that kind of training. Everyone will work.
Okay. So we are going to leave there, and on day one, we'll
Yeah.
at least have something we will have practiced
Hmm.
and had some experience in that we can make use of.
Hmm.
All right.
Absolutely.
Well, I like your confidence. That actually makes me more excited about doing it. I don't, I don't know what the word you used was, arrogant or something, but
Well, yeah.
it didn't come across that way to me. It made me think, yeah, I think, um, that I feel like I'm gonna experience something.
I hope so. No one's going to leave an expert. After all, it did take me, 2.5 years to learn how to do this effectively and to be proficient, but you'll have enough to get you going and to start doing things, and hopefully to start thinking about things in a slightly different way.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Donna Harris, and I'll look forward to seeing you again on at the conference.
Thanks so much, Lisa. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Take care.